Hi, I'm Esther Avant. Rich and I recently had an awesome chat here on the podcast. I'd love for you to check out my podcast, To Your Health. With over 350 episodes, it's all about helping you stop starting over and finally follow through on your goals, starting with your health. You can find it wherever you're listening now.
Hey everyone, it's Rich Bennett. Can you believe it? The show is turning 10 this year. I am so grateful for each and every one of you who've tuned in, shared an episode, or even joined the conversation over the years. You're the reason that this podcast has grown into what it is today. Together, we've shared laughs, tears, and moments that truly matter. So I want to thank you for being part of this journey. Let's make the next 10 years even better.
Coming to you from the Freedom Federal Credit Union Studios, Harford County Living presents Conversations with Rich Bennett.
Slow pitch
It's probably the least sexy part of organizing. No. The truth is,
Have you ever wondered what plants might teach us about living a more meaningful, purpose-driven life? What if I told you today's guest went from working at Microsoft to co-owning a circus to touring with Cirque du Soleil? Did I say that right? Soleil, whatever. And now lives in one of the world's largest spiritual eco-communities where she teaches people how to reconnect with nature in ways you've probably never imagined. Well, on this episode of Conversations with Rich Bennett, I am joined by the incredible, and oh my God, I hope I say this right, but those of you listening, trust me, when you hear her say her name, you'll be like, Rich, don't say her name again, because the way she says it is just so beautiful. Tigrilla Gardenia, a nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and self-proclaimed world ambassador for plant advocacy. Tigrilla helps creative, multi-passionate people unlock clarity, confidence, and direction by time. Good Lord, I have running lips here today. By tuning into the intelligence of the natural world. We're talking about the actual wisdom of plants. So if you're someone who's felt pulled in a dozen different directions, or you're just craving a deeper sense of connection and purpose, this conversation is going to shift your perspective in a big way. So grab your drink, whether it's a herbal tea, mushroom coffee, grab something plant-based. Uh-oh. Is that okay, Tigrilla, to have a plant-based drink?
Look, we're going to find out.
I'm getting the evil look already, man. I am in trouble. How you doing, Tigrilla?
I am doing great. And here's I'm going to say this right off the bat. The fact
I messed it up.
No. Actually, the contrary. My favorite conversations, especially because, again, working with plants, totally different logic, total different way, and totally different language, which means when language starts to kind of, you can't find the right words, that's when we know we're on the right track.
All right, do me a favor. For all of those listening, you have to do it. Tell everybody your name.
My name is Tigrilla Gardenia.
Oh, my God. See, I told you all, when she says it, it's definitely prettier. I mean, when I'm listening to your podcast, the thing is, just when you say your name, that alone is going to pull people right in. I'm serious. But and before we were talking, you told me what it meant. And
Yes.
I think this is just simply amazing. Tell everybody what your name means.
So my name is Tigrilla, is a small South American feline, kind of in the family of ocelots. So ocelot or ocelote is a big, and then there's a margai who's kind of in between, and then there's myself who's like small and lives up in the trees, big eyes, beautiful, like spotted fur, just a really beautiful animal. And then of course the gardenia is the plant
too, right?
Huh?
And probably fierce as well,
Absolutely.
right?
As a matter of fact, it's really fun. There's this gorgeous organization in the mountains, in the forest of Colombia that does rehabilitation of wild animals. I love this organization. I follow them on Instagram, and they often will find, because when we're little, tigrillos are very small. And so people think that they're cats. And then all of a sudden they start to wreak havoc in the house. And they're like, maybe this isn't a cat after all.
Oh, wow.
Like a domesticated cat. And so, they often get found in people's homes, or they're losing a lot of their land, as you could just imagine, things that are happening in the forest of Colombia. And so they do rehabilitation. They have all these videos of these what seem like kitty cats, right? Tiny. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I did not expect that kind of hunting from that animal.
Now, that's not the one that eats the coffee beans, is it?
No, these eat, they're like I said, they live up in trees. And so they are carnivorous as carnivorous can be. They love to, explore the forest and eat what they, hunt and such. They're really adorable. They're right now rehabilitating one whose name is Javi, I think, and is so cute. It's just adorable. So, but that's the whole reason. So in my community where I live, we have the opportunity, if we want to conquer new names. And the first name is usually a nature spirit or an animal, to really connect to that side of ourselves, to those parts of ourselves. Most people will choose animal names because animal is really getting into, and it's fun now because, we've got there's about 500 of us living in the general area where I am in the first city in Italy. And then there's about another, 700 to 1,000 around the world. And so as more and more people are conquering their names, we've gone from kind of the generic, bear, whatever, bear, swan, this, that, or the other, to now the really specific species. And it's fantastic because just to see why people want to conquer names. And sometimes you're offered the name that you want. Sometimes instead it's this big game that happens, and the community will select and offer you a different name. And you always can have the chance to say yes or no. But there's some great stories of people who, like the woman who asked for swan many, many years ago and ended up in skunk. And at first you say exactly that. But then if you talk to her, she will tell you, she would never change her name. She loves her name, and she feels like it's such a beautiful, and she's learned so much and has been able to connect with this animal in such a deep way. And that's really what it is. It's this extremely deep connection on multiple levels. Some people will choose the Latin name, kind of the scientific name. Some people will choose the kind of common name in their own language. Now that we have people around the world, we have names in Norwegian and names in Croatian, names in English and in Italian. And it's, even indigenous language. Like, for example, the person whose name is Tasmanian Devil, kind of devil is not really the best name. So he has the name Taraba, which is the indigenous name of that animal. So it's really beautiful and super fun and interesting to see, what aspects of the animal do you connect with, and therefore which name do you choose?
And then the last name, Gardenia?
Yeah. And so the second names are plants or fungi. And so, gardenia is this beautiful flower with, this wonderful scent. And it really reminds me of my youth. I grew up in South Florida, even though I've been in Europe for the last 20 years, but I grew up in Miami and I lived for a long time in Seattle. And just the gardenia will remind me of home. It reminds me of my grandmother, who would collect gardenias and put them in boiling hot water. And at the end of the shower, she would dump it on me, to perfume me. And so I've just always have this idea of the purity, that scent, that connection beyond just the visual, but also through other senses.
All right, wait a minute. Let me get this straight. Okay, so you grew up in South Florida.
Correct.
Seattle, it makes sense because you were working for Microsoft.
Correct.
And then to the circus.
Correct.
And then you said you've been here for how long?
I've been in Europe for 20 years because I left and I was with Cirque. Then when I came off tour with Cirque, I decided I was not going to come back to the US. I was not ready. I'm still not ready. And so I stayed and I traveled a little bit, and then I ended up living in Barcelona for a number of years. And then from Barcelona, I had the opportunity to come and visit here. And when I came here, it was supposed to just be a weekend. And then all of a sudden, synchronicity took flight. And I was offered the opportunity to come and work on a project here for 6 months. And at the same time, my roommate back in Barcelona was like, hey, I'm moving back to Argentina, so you're going to have to find a new place to live. So I was like, well, I got to find a new place to live anyway. Let me just do this 6 months. I loved Barcelona. I thought I was going to be there forever. I thought I had found home. And I came here thinking, okay, 6 months and then I'll be back. Man, that was almost 15 years later. I'm still here.
Okay. Stuff ain't adding up here. Because in all honesty, when you first came on, I figured you're probably early 30s.
Aw, you're so sweet.
I'm serious.
Yeah,
though.
Well, add another 20 years to that.
No way. No way.
Yeah way.
So it must be the plant life.
Definitely.
Most people, I would say, is the fountain of youth. I think it's the plant life for you.
Damanhur, in some ways, I have to say, when I first got here, I mean, I do have good genes. If you met my mother, you'd also say the same thing to her. You'd think she's 20 years younger than she is. She's amazing. But in addition to that, like, when I first came to Damanhur, and when most people come to Damanhur, you look around and you're like, what is going on here? Like, how old are people? You can't figure it out. And it's a combination of, our health system is the idea of preventative medicine. So, good life, living well amongst others. So deep family connections from all kinds of different ways, eating well, eating close to the land and such. And then we have, kind of, spiritual technologies to help us with, staying youthful, rejuvenation of organs and all kinds of different things. And then we have really great doctors. So this whole idea of medicine really starts way before, not after something happens. I was like, okay, now I get it. Like, now I get it, and that's the reason why around here, you can't tell how old people are at all. It's like, what, she's what, or he's what? It's amazing.
I'll be honest with you. I mean, I've had, probably going to get the name wrong, people that study plants, but whatever they're called. I've talked to them.
Botanist or...
Yeah, botanist. Thank you. I would butcher it. But with you, it's different because when I was looking at everything, and I want to get into this. Number one, what is a musical plant? And what was the life-changing thing that connected you?
Yeah, exactly. So I should just preface very quickly to tell this story well is that I grew up, like I said, in South Florida, in Miami, in the height of the music scene in Miami. So music is a fundamental core part of my life. I have a degree in music engineering and electrical engineering. Like,
really?
I love music is my jam from the perspective of the arts, especially in general. Now it's more art, but the whole concept of just like music. I used to produce large events. I've toured with different groups. I mean, I've done a lot of different things in the whole world, and even my career. When I started my career right before Microsoft, was the height of like the internet, as the internet was really being born. And we're talking about, I used to work for Real Network. So it was when audio and video first came into the world. So my specialization has always been audio. Anyway, so I'm here in Damanhur and I'm walking around one of our main areas and I hear this music. And like I said, music is I love music but I'm listening and I'm like, I don't understand. I don't recognize this type of music. It was just really odd type of music. So I followed the music and it took me to this like little box, with a speaker that was then connected to a plant. And I was like, what the heck is this? And it was interesting because as I'm listening to this music, it's almost like the plant is talking to me. And we often think of music as a language, but it's actually the opposite way around. Language as we know it is a musicality. Okay. It is music that comes first. It's the thing that we really recognize. Even as babies, we recognize rhythm and beats and all these before we can ever understand words. Yeah. So emotions transmit through these types of mediums. And so this plant, as I was listening to this music, I was like, oh my goodness, are you talking to me? Like, are you talking to me? Like, what? So for me, it was an instantaneous, almost like plant reawakening to recognize, oh my goodness, this plant is actually creating this music. What is going on here? And so it comes from a device that we started working on in the 1980s. There's a few, actually late 1970s, early 1980s, and we've refined over the years. It's called the Music of the Plants. And it's a small device. It's basically a music instrument for plants. And over the years, we've had lots of different versions. And now there's a few other companies that, have created similar devices. The difference between the device that we've created here in Damanhur is that because we are a spiritual community, because our base was not let's make music, but more of how can we relate to the plant world? How can we enter and hear what the plant is doing? So it's a form of biofeedback that allows the plant to use their electrical system, their electrical body, to create these notes of music. And then over time, what we have found is that the plants recognize that they're the ones making the music and can therefore modify the music and harmonize and create different things. So the music has lots of different functions and different ways of being we've discovered over the years. But fundamentally, it's a form of communication. It's a way for us to relate and connect, whether we do it as musicians and, you do it for the music part, or as I mainly use it now as a form of literally connection, communication, a way to feel it into my body. I mean, there's lots of different aspects, but it's something that uses a language that we all speak, music, and to recognize that plants are not inert. It's not just that I'm alive because I breathe, but other than that, there's nothing going on, which I think for many people, that's pretty much what they think, right? Yeah, sure, plants are alive. I've got to keep them alive, but that's about it. And then we don't recognize there's something called plant blindness, which is a term sometimes now called plant disparity disorder. Which is the fact that we don't recognize plants in our environment for everything that they are and everything that can give us. So in the sense that plants not just create oxygen, but they create ecosystems. They have a whole series of ecosystem services. They have their own experiences, their own way of doing things. And we don't recognize. We just see background. Like if I give you a picture and it has, all of this jungle and a tigrillo in the middle of it, you're going to say, oh, look, cat. Right. And it's like, yes. And what about, all of these other plants? And we just kind of blends into who we are. So the music of the plants is a way for us to sort of hear.
That is not a plant singing, by the way.
No. That's the daughter looking for you again.
The sad thing is, I could have sworn I put that thing on Do Not Disturb. It is on Do Not Disturb. It's
one of those days.
It is. It's weird. It's weird. But the funny thing, well, it's not funny because you always hear that if telling people to talk to their plants, talk to your plants. But one of the things you never hear is listen to your plants. And bingo. To me, it makes sense because. Yeah, I mean, plants are a living thing. When you're in the woods, you're in the forest or whatever, especially if it's a windy day, to me, the trees are singing. When those leaves are waving, if you really sit back and listen, they're singing to you. If animals, like birds, frogs, if they can sing, talk, whatever you want to call it, why can't plants?
Exactly.
And
that's exactly it.
I do believe that plants they've been here a lot longer than us, for one. But I do believe if you learn to listen to them like you do, we can learn so much more. I do know for a fact that, and you can touch on this, when it comes to your mental health, oh my God. What a difference. I mean, they even say gardening is great for your mental health. Just sitting down and surrounding yourself with different plants.
Absolutely. It's incredible how much we, I recently was doing an interview. I interviewed an eco-psychologist. We had a beautiful conversation. And one of the things that we were talking about was the fact that this separation that we have from nature is kind of our original collective trauma. It's the trauma that we all as humans have. The more disconnected we are from nature, the more we feel this hole. And like you said, scientifically speaking, there are many now studies starting. I mean, the first set of studies that I read about the connection of your mental health and plants go back to like the 1970s, some into the 1960s, that talk about how, spending time in nature, for example, just 20 minutes in a natural environment immersed will lower my cortisol levels and bring my stress down by like 50%. I mean, it's not a small number. There are studies that have been done in the United States and in Denmark that show that if you live in a neighborhood where you can see kind of a little bit of wildness, whether that's an overgrown, an overgrown lot, like an old parking lot that gets left behind and, when it starts to grow out and stuff, just having something like that nearby will actually, people will self-report higher levels of positive mental health. They'll feel less depression. These types of environments where you spend time, even just at a public park, you'll end up being more altruistic. There's terpenes in the air that we breathe in, and the whole concept of forest bathing, of shirin-yoku, which has very specific kind of properties around both physical health as well as mental health. I mean, there's just overwhelming evidence that the awe and the wonder of time spent in nature can help us and does help us to grow better. On top of that, you add, like you said, the part that we have forgotten, which is my body is made up of a number of senses, right? I think about my top 5, right? The sense of sight and vision and hearing and all these things. But plants have, at least that we know of, and we know that there's more that we don't know, at least another 15. And so if you think about myself as evolving from or with plants, then you must think that my body somewhere registers some at least of those senses, right? The whole fact of electromagnetic pressure and of actual like humidity and of light and all these different aspects. And so all of these influence who I am. So when I can hear, when I give myself the space to hear the plant, and hearing, some people are going to hear it as like an auditory thing. Like you said, the rustling of the trees. There's a whole series of experimentations out there that you can try about how plants can rustle and move and such in response to you, but also just allowing your body to receive and just giving yourself that space completely starts to transform the way that you experience life, the way that I think about it, because I don't rely so much on that animal side of myself that runs away.
Right.
But I start to rely on that more plant side of me that is sessile, that's rooted into the earth, and that is saying, no, stay here and deal with this. Like, you can learn, you can be resilient, and you can deal with whatever comes your way because you've got all these other tools that you just don't know that you have. And so it really just changes the way that you fundamentally approach life. You feel more in flow, and like everything has its way of being dealt with.
All right. Now, are you in an apartment or a house?
Kind of both. I live in a really, really small town, and we live in these things called nucleos, which are these shared houses. Okay. And so I'm right now kind of in an apartment in a bigger structure.
So you don't have a yard?
No and yes, in the sense that I am sitting right in front of a giant meadow that then leads to a river. I have a bunch of cows and Gary the silver fir, who's sitting really tall in front of me. And I live at the foothills of the Alps. So we have green. The area that we live in is called the Val Cusella, which is the closed valley. And it's this gorgeous valley connected to this really green space. So yeah, I'm immersed in nature and everything. As a matter of fact, earlier today, a friend of mine wrote to me. She's like, I'm having a crap day. You want to go take a walk? And we were like, yeah, let's go. And so we just walked down, and then got my feet all stuck in the mud because there's a bunch of streams and river. And it sounds horrible, but it was actually great. I'm like, if I only... you're like, take your shoes off, and you're like, screw it. I'm just going to stick myself in the mud and the cows are following us around because they're like, what? Because they're very curious animals. So they're like, what are you guys doing over there? And you have all these plants around. It's quite an experience here.
I like that. The cows are just like, what the what?
They are super curious. I remember one time. So like I said, I live in a little, like when you think about kind of an Italian town, I live in a tiny little Italian town. Population in the exact town that I'm in, I think it's population 200 or something like that. And so one time we were we have a place called the Damanhur, which is kind of it's an old Oliveri typewriting factory that has been converted into, it has a supermarket and like a little cafe and, some shops and all kinds of different stuff like that for us. And they have an outdoor area where you sit and you have, whatever coffee and stuff like that. So we're sitting out there and all of a sudden this cow, I swear it was something out of a television show. This cow comes walking by and stops in front of all of us and is like looking around, because this area is a crossroads where shepherds will, because a lot of cows here are still in pasture, so they get moved around throughout the year. And the area right in front of me is one of the large pastures that they use, plus there's a few pocket ones all around. And then they head from here up to the mountains and down to the valley so they can go in both directions. So oftentimes you're like, I got to go somewhere, and you can't go anywhere because there's like 50 cows that are passing through with their shepherds. Anyway, so this cow apparently is like standing there, and she's looking at us like, oh shit, I just got made, because she's kind of like, you could tell she had just come out because they put a type of electric fencing around.
Right.
It's just a very small wire thing that goes around. And apparently this cow got out of it. So she was like trying to get away very inconspicuously, and then stops with all these humans that are staring at her going, what are you doing here? And she's just looking. She kind of looks back from where she came from, then looked at all of us, and then darted in the opposite direction. It's like, I'm getting out of here as fast as I can until somebody catches me. Because usually the shepherds will leave the cow with a dog.
Right.
But not always. Sometimes they don't leave the dogs. And so this one didn't have the dog. So the dog didn't, because normally the dogs are really good about like chasing the cow back towards the thing. They're very, very interesting dogs. But it was hysterical. And I see that happen sometimes here. But there it was just so funny because it was the middle of the town. And you're like, what are you doing here? And she was just like, I'm out. And she just ran as fast as she can in the opposite direction.
Well,
we were like, all right. And everybody went back to drinking.
And the reason I asked if you had a yard or not, but you have that giant one out in your front window.
Yep.
I wanted to know if you actually had like a meditation garden, which yours is out front. It's
exactly
everybody's. But for those people listening, especially if they don't know how to reconnect with plants, and I'm sure you meditate, well, you're involved with nature. That is meditating, I believe. Yep. What are some of the best plants to surround yourself with, especially to help out with your mental health?
Yeah, this is a great, great question from the perspective of the most important thing is for you to work with plants that feel good to you. The reason I say this is because, for example, I admit I am not the biggest green thumb type of person. I love nature outside. And at the same time, inside of my house, most of the plants inside of my house are succulents. There are a few plants that live with me because they've called to me in different reasons. Like, for example, peace lilies are plants that I have one peace lily that lives with me right next to my bed because used to live in this area where I am right now and was like, this isn't working for me. And so peace lily was like, I'm going to your bedroom. And and Key is the first plant I see every morning. And there is a deep, deep relationship and flourishing there. But for example, I don't have plants around that I struggle with taking care of, right? So a lot of the plants, I have Jaina and Zane, God, I can't speak even myself, that are two aloes that live with me and that came to me from different directions. So what I always tell people is, sure, there are some plants that you could like look at a chart. For example, right behind me, there's no name Dracaena, which is a snake plant. And you could have tons of plants in your house that have specific characteristics. Like this plant is known to be a really great plant to have in your bedroom because during the night, they don't reverse their breathing patterns like most plants do.
Right.
Most plants breathe like us during the nighttime. Daytime, they breathe opposite, and then at night, they breathe like us. But this plant doesn't. So therefore, at night, you're still filling your air, your bedroom with oxygen. So there are some plants that are like that you have characteristics. Right. But if I'm then worried about whether or not I'm going to kill this plant, I don't know how to take care of the plant, I don't know how to do blah, 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 it's not worth it. It's not worth it because then you don't really give yourself the space to form the relationship. So what I always say to people is really let the plant almost choose you and call you. If you give yourself that space, and it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of going to Home Depot, although I understand. I prefer that you go to a garden center where you have people that actually care about the plants.
That know what they're talking about.
And that know what they're talking about, but that actually care about the way that plant was raised. Yeah. But even if you find a plant, like I do have a few plants that live with me that I was in IKEA and I was walking around and all of a sudden I hear, psst, psst, yo, come this way. And you come over and it's like €1 or $1 for a plant that's almost dead. And you're just like, I can't leave you here. I can't leave you here. So I always say that more likely than not, you are hearing something. And that might be a sound, but it also might just be a feeling. I can't tell you how many people after we start to talk are like, that is why when I walk down this street, something always pulls me back and makes me stop for a second. And I'm like, yeah, because most likely the tree or some plant in somebody's yard or something is calling you. Someone wants to connect. And so the best thing for you to do is instead allow that to happen and then start there. Any plant can be really powerful for your mental health because it's not about the type of plant, but about the relationship, the giving yourself the space to really sit. Like I'm one who will sit here where I am right now at my desk. There is, yes, Gary, the silver fir in the window right outside, but there's also a whole number of plants all around me, some of which I work with very closely and some of which I don't. They're just there. But all of them, I can say that I know who they are. Like I literally will spaz out just sitting here staring at one or closing my eyes and just feeling connected to one. And no matter what, something is arriving. I might not always be able to articulate it. As I was saying to you at the beginning, I love it when we don't have words because it's not about the words. It's not about the deep understandings necessarily. It's about feeling that connection and allowing that connection to transform you. Today, I published a small kind of like leaf reset. And it's a little activity that you can do in 10 seconds, which is, you're having a day where everything is open. There's no clarity. You don't know what the heck is going on. And so you just sit with whatever plant feels appropriate. Put your finger kind of on a leaf or on something, the stem, somewhere where you're touching the plant. Give the plant all your crap because plants like crap. Crap is fertilizer. So don't worry about it. Give them all your crap and be like, 57 tabs open in my mind. I can't find clarity. I don't know where I'm going. And then just give yourself a second. Take that nice deep breath as you exhale over a few beats to just see what comes, whatever comes. Did you feel cold? Did you feel warm? Did you get a tingle somewhere? And then let that word sit in your mind for a second and then wherever it might go. Don't try to say, oh, it needs to be. It could be a memory that you have of like, when I was 12, my brother came in and gave me noogies. And then when I did that, I turned around and I saw blah, blah, blah. And that might be your answer because plants will use your memory. So don't be afraid to think that whatever comes through, whatever sensation is a distraction or something. Most likely it's the plant using something of you to be able to connect to you.
How long did it take for you to realize that, I want to say it's a gift, that you can hear the plants as well as feel them and everything?
Yeah, I would say it's been a progression over time. Okay. For example, for me, it started more on the audio side because of the music. So the music gave me kind of a frame of reference.
Okay.
And when I teach plant communication, I tell people to start with art, because oftentimes we try too fast to make sense of it.
Right.
And instead, that's not what this is about. This isn't about asking a question and getting an answer. It's not like a tarot deck or, some kind of thing, dowsing, where I'm trying to like get a very precise answer. It's slightly different. It's more of, I'm trying to really reconnect back into nature so that I can experience the world as a being of nature, which means I create better connections, better relationships. I can communicate better, all these types of things that start to happen. So for example, the plant behind me that I call no-name Dracaena, I call this plant that name because about 2 years ago, I started to 2 to 3 years ago now. Yeah, two plus. I started to work with this plant with the intention of working on a very specific thing. And the plant was like, you need to get back in touch with your body. Like, you don't feel things anymore. You're trying to intellectualize it all. That was so I'm not going to talk to you. I just want you to move. I want you to. So we have spent the last few years, and I've spent the last few years with the help of this plant feeling things again, like allowing my body to be loud as a body, like to move my arms, to move my body, to get back into my flexibility, for example. Like, and since I started to do things, you start to notice how things change. Like, I don't know, from simple things, like the way I do yoga in the morning, my body feels more not just in movement, but then I realize that there's a clarity that comes with that. And so it's more of these types of subtle changes. So I would say that probably in the last, whatever it's been, 12, 13 years 12 years at least, that I've been working closely with plants, my whole life has changed, but because I sit there, like there are those people that love to sit there and like I touch a tree and I get a message, and sure, that happens to me sometimes too, but it's way different. It's more of, and what I teach is, how do you hear that innate wisdom, that innate knowledge, that innate sense of being? How do you feel into it and feel comfortable and confident and know that it's not just coming from the plant or from yourself, but it's that combination. It's almost the entanglement between you two that is forming and giving you the direction. So you don't feel alone. You don't feel like you're doing things in a vacuum. You start to get a better sense of how the things that you do affect the overall system in which you're in, your ecosystem. I always say you're like creating a living ecosystem that is from both within and without. And it's all entangled. And it feels good. Like even when you're doing crappy things, you sort of start to get to understand even plants compete at times. Like it's not always just roses and beautiful experiences. Sometimes it's war in a forest, but you start to see where that comes from, what is its purpose and how is it limited? And it just gives you this sense of, oh, these parts of me are also natural, so I can learn how to use them and put them to use for the overall ecosystem that I'm immersed in.
You're listening to Conversations with Rich Bennett. We'll be right back. Let's take a little break here so I can tell you about my friends over at Four Seasons Landscape and Construction Services. And when it comes to lawn maintenance and lawn renovations, they are definitely the go-to people, even snow removal services. But something else that a lot of people don't think about that's very important that they do, stormwater maintenance, whether it's a pond clean out, remove overgrowth of woody ornamentals, debris, trash, and even drainage services. If you have a cracked foundation, they can rerun your downspouts, French drains, proper grading. There's so much that goes in to stormwater maintenance and the proper drainage in your yard. And a lot of people don't know how to do it. You don't want it to run into the bay. You don't want it to run towards your foundation. You need the professionals to take care of it. And the professionals are Four Seasons Landscape and Construction Services. Give them a call today, 443-390-YARD. That's 443-390-YARD, 9273. Or go to their website, fourseasonslandscapemd.com. Again, that's fourseasonslandscapemd.com. They're giving you sustainable landscapes for the future, and they are the ones that get your yard looking beautiful. How important is it to have plants in your house?
Oh, huge. I mean, so let me start by saying there are some people that for lots of reasons can't have plants. And
Right.
from a studies perspective, there's something called biophilic design, which is this whole biophilia is the love of nature, right? The love of the natural from myself and outside of myself. And biophilic design is designing with the idea of triggering, as we said, or feeling connected to that natural part of myself. So technically, there are many ways that you can create quote unquote natural environments that feel natural, even
Right.
without having specific plants. I mean, if you can't have a plant in your house because you have an allergy, because you have a situation, because you're just not allowed for whatever, even artificial plants can have a benefit because our bodies trigger and connect. So that's first thing. Second thing is in biophilic design, there's a whole series of other things like light that comes through in a soft way rather than a straight, because if I'm in nature, light is almost always being filtered through something, through the
Right.
canopy of trees and stuff. So if you have dapple light that moves and shimmers and changes over time, that makes me feel like I'm in a natural environment. If I have a water source, a little fountain, water that's running, I start to feel that relaxed state. So there's all of those aspects. The second part that I will say is that what is almost most important, whether you have plants in your house or not, is more of starting to recognize that nature is everywhere.
Yeah.
We as humans, as adults, there was a great study that came out called The Nature of Americans that I cite a lot because it's just so telling, that says that when you ask an adult, what is nature? How do I connect to nature? They think out there. I have to pack up the car. I have to put on my hiking boots. I have to go out to the middle of nowhere. And that's how I connect to nature. If you ask a child, how do you connect to nature? They will look around them and they'll point at the ground and they're like, right there. Don't you see the grass coming through the sidewalk? That's nature. Or, ooh, look at the little crack on the wall and the moss coming through. Ooh, that's nature. Children will see nature everywhere and we lose this as adults.
Yeah,
but if
do.
we get that wonder back, it is that connection to nature through wonder that gives us all those mental health benefits that we're talking about. So all I have to do is it's that plant blindness I was talking about. It's the reawakening from that plant blindness allows me to see the teeniest, tiniest little bit of nature, no matter where I am, and all of a sudden connect. I remember one of the first plants that's right behind my monitor, so I can't see, Key fully right now. But I remember my friend when she gave me Key was like a tiny little cactus, this big. And at the time, this was the only plant that was inside of my home. It was just because I had a room, I was immersed in other kind of nature, but that was the only plant that literally lived with me.
Uh-huh.
And that was enough. That's besides the fact that, Key is really big right now. But the point being was I was so enamored by this one little cactus of wow, you're so cool. And, that was enough. That was enough.
I've been wanting to get and I can't wait to, well, as you can see behind me, I got the green screen because I've been remodeling my office as a studio. And that's one of the things I cannot wait is to get some plants in here. Mm-hmm. I just can't figure out, because there's a big difference between putting the plants inside and outside. I know the plants I want to put outside already because I want a pollinating garden out there, which I believe is very important, and a water garden. I think that's what they call it. Yeah, water garden. But inside it's completely different. I'm trying to figure out what to put in there, which I'm hitting everything now. It makes it harder. But those of you listening, and you've heard me talk about this when I came across the hummingbird moth and all that. If you get the chance, if you have a yard or even inside your house, put together a little garden and then go out there and enjoy it. Don't be afraid of the insects and everything that come around. Look at them. And I got it. I'm going to say it wrong. Tigrilla.
Perfect.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you this story. So I have a beautiful butterfly bush out back. Well, did, and then I moved out. I got to get a new one now. Anyways, have you ever seen a hummingbird moth?
Not live.
Okay. And at first I thought it was a bumblebee because it looked like a queen bee or whatever. And I'm just sitting there watching it, and it's like, oh, that's a hummingbird moth. And he was just sitting there at the butterfly bush. I am not lying. The thing allowed me to pet it.
I believe it.
Oh my God. When you do that, just connecting with nature, it's just something that overcomes you. You feel it out. I don't know. I can't explain it, but.
And that's it. It's not something that needs to be explained. It's something that needs to be felt. And that's the most beautiful part about it. And like you said, it's just sitting there and giving yourself the space. One of the things I like to do, I have in the area that I'm in right now, there's a small balcony. And in the balcony, half of the pots have plants that have arrived in some ways. If you go to my podcast, you'll hear some of the stories. Besides the fact that right now there's 3 geranium pots that are just, this town gives geranium plants every year, which sounds lovely, but to me it's horrible because of course most of the people just kill them and it's terrifying. But so what happens is a lot of people bring me the geraniums, and the geraniums are doing, I'm without words every time I walk outside and I see, but there's a bunch of pots that I have that are empty. And the reason that they're empty, they have, in the sense that they have soil, and I keep the soil moist and I water the soil on a regular basis. And somebody was like, why are you watering soil? I was like, because this is where my visitors come. So one of them has now been overrun by clover. And I love it. There's 2 different kinds of clover that are growing there. Usually purslane will come to visit once a year, and purslane will spend a few months with me. And so there's always some pot where purslane will just show up in. And I love working with purslane in different ways, both as nutrient, and purslane will almost always show up in the years when I really need purslane for lots of different reasons. Sometimes
what is
chickweed.
purslane?
Purslane is a type of, some people will call it a weed, but it's a type of plant that you've probably seen purslane a bunch of times because purslane grows very close to the ground, like in the crack of sidewalks, has a really kind of almost succulent like look, but very, very flat to the ground.
Okay.
And so purslane, there's 2 particular pots in my house that for whatever reason purslane really likes and will constantly kind of show up in. Also chickweed will just randomly show up. And so it's really beautiful. I have a few pots that are just empty because it's like, okay, whomever wants to come and visit me, come and visit, like come and spend time with me. And some will last, like the clover has been there now several years. Others instead will go away for a few years and then come back. It's really fascinating. And so not always does it have to be this, as you're kind of saying, this beautiful manicured garden. On the contrary, it could be just an area of your home, whether inside or outside, that you leave a little wild, that you give space to see who arrives, what arrives. And oftentimes that relationship that you create with those plants will really give you a lot of information. Last year, I had randomness of randomness in a pot in my bathroom, started growing a tomato plant. Mind you, I don't eat tomatoes. I do not like tomatoes. Tomatoes don't come into my house generally. So I never planted tomato. There's a little few guesses as to how a tomato plant, I thought I was planting an avocado plant in there. And I don't even eat avocados, but I was just trying to sprout the avocado and see, because here they wouldn't give fruit anyway. So it's a beautiful musician I've worked with in the past. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try. Somebody gave me an avocado pit and it ended up with a tomato plant. So I ended up like really having deep conversations with this plant of like, why are you here? Because I don't like you to eat. So you have to have some reason why you're showing up. And I did a whole podcast episode about tomato and basil, who are actually complementary, but basil also showed up at my house. Somebody gifted me 2 basil plants. And I was like, why do I have basil and tomatoes in my, it's just weird.
Just
and then
missing
I got into
mozzarella cheese and the balsamic vinegar.
Which is perfect here. Not a problem. So it ended up being this really interesting conversation that I did podcast about. Like I said, I did an episode about, because it was fascinating to learn about myself, about why, what I was learning also from these plants that were trying to teach me about life and death, and about what it meant to be an annual versus a perennial, like all kinds of different things. And all of that just came because this plant showed up and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to just water you. I'm not going to, and I did eat one because it was gross because I don't like tomatoes, but I tried. I said, okay, you're trying to feed me. I'm going to try to eat you. I'm doing that. And then I was like, I'm done. I've done my part, like on this front. Can we try another way of communicating that is not through food? Type of thing. But it's, and it was fascinating. It was fascinating to see how tomato grew. It was fascinating to be there, to spend time, to just sit in ended up moving from the bathroom to a pot onto the balcony and would sit next to and be like, all right, I'm just going to sit here with you all and figure out what the heck you're doing here.
God, I want to talk about your podcast, but before I do, because you do the coaching, there's a lot of things on your website, including the 5-day challenge. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what everybody can find on your website, and then and the services that you offer, because then I want to get into your podcast.
Yeah, I do one-on-one coaching, like mentorship and coaching. So it's mostly life coaching, which means basically everything, because life is life, and as things transform. And all of my coaching has a one-on-one element. The idea of, really, so I'm kind of a bridge. I love helping you get from where you are to where you want to go. And I work mainly with neurodivergent or multi-passionate people with lots and lots of ideas, lots of passions, lots of different things. Those people that have been told for their lives that like you're distracted, you're jumping around from thing to thing, you don't know how to finish projects. I have a whole different philosophy. Come to me. I will show you how none of it is a distraction. It's all super, super useful.
Oh, I love
because
this.
in an ecosystem, everything gets used.
Right.
So things that we think of as limiting beliefs, I have a completely different philosophy on all of these types of, they're all relationships that we need to rebuild and different tools that we need to learn how to master. And then when we do, we start to see how they all fit together and how we jump from one to the other. So my one-on-one work is really about holding that space for the kind of neurodivergent, multi-passionate mind to like dump everything in there and be like, okay, now how do we look at this as if it's an ecosystem? How do we create this so that it all helps helps each other, and that everything kind of finds its place, and that you learn how to master all these techniques? And always I have an element, because I live in community, I believe in community, and I have an online community called the Naturally Conscious Community, which is all dedicated to human-plant relationships across all different realms, arts and intellect and feelings and everything we've been talking about in books and all kinds of different aspects. And in there, you also have the community part that is, having mirrors around you, having a space environment where you can also, because I'm not going to go and tell you what to do, but it's great when you share what you want to do and you have lots of voices that help you kind of like see it from different angles, because there is no such thing as absolute truth in this world. It's all facets of the way that we interpret that truth. And so therefore, when you can see that, and then you have that safe environment with myself to be like, okay, I now have, kind of mirrored this out, and now this is the way I'm seeing, and we can look at it and kind of give it into that space. That's really what helps you transform your life. It's this long-term evolution, that is happening together. And the plants really help us understand, as mentors as well as models, and co-creators, like how do we bring in this alternative way of thinking? Because many neurodivergence, really, when you look at it from the perspective of the way a plant thinks, man, you're just as typical can be, because plants all have their own unique way of dealing with things. Right. So they help us see other models and other ways of being that don't have to go through the box, and allows me to communicate effectively to anybody, but still without losing my authentic voice, and feeling really comfortable in my skin and really resilient that I can deal with things, and being able to use the different aspects and characteristics of myself. So really my coaching is focused on that. And that's why it's more for your overall life, whether that's your business life or your personal life.
You do it all virtually, right?
I do it all virtually. I mean, I live in Damanhur, so I do have a few clients here that are kind of personal, but I do it all virtually. And to be honest, I love the virtual environment. We were just talking about this yesterday in one of my group calls, because inside the Naturally Conscious community, we have a lot of different activities. So we meet a lot. The possibility to meet a lot. It's drop in. It's not a like, you have to be there, but it's more of, you have the opportunity to be there. And we often talk about, we have people inside the Naturally Conscious community that have traveled across the continents, to different continents, to meet each other, because we just feel so connected. And that's one of the things that I do really well. I love that supportive environment. And so I'm really good at kind of, how would I say, going beyond the idea of the online space as being detached, but instead feeling super, super connected, even though we might not have ever met in person. So I love that. And I also, because here in Damanhur, I also represent and I'm kind of the coordinator of Damanhur International. So I have a lot of cultural experience. I speak multiple languages. And so it's another way that my multipotentialite brain also can kind of go through. So I have a really expansive way of looking at the world that helps kind of hold, like I said, that overall space for people.
How many different languages do you speak?
I speak 3 languages really well, one language crappily well. And then I've learned, I've studied a bunch of other languages. So I'll be able to, it was funny because I was just in Croatia last week, and I was at some point, some people were talking around me and they were looking at me and they're like, "Oh, you understand?" And I was like, "No, kind of. Like, I get what you're trying to say. I just don't understand the words you're saying, but I get what you're trying to say." And in part, it's because I've studied a lot of different languages, so you start to kind of understand structures. A lot is because I'm really good at reading people. And a lot of it is the plants. They've helped me sort of, again, hear the rhythm, hear the meaning beyond. And so I just trust my intuition. So oftentimes 2 people will be talking and I'll like say something about what they're talking about. And they'll be like, "I didn't know you spoke whatever language, Norwegian." And I was like, "I don't, but I kind of get what you're talking about," type of thing.
Wow. Wait, all right, and when we began, you mentioned music. Did you play music as well?
I do. I used to. I don't really. I'm more of a singer now. My college instrument was actually piano, which I switched over to voice kind of at the tail end in some part, and so I've played a few different instruments too, but I wouldn't say, again, it's another one of those things that for some would look at it as, "Oh, you never really mastered it." I'm like, that wasn't the point. I was more of an engineer, and what the music gave me was a sort of discipline. Yeah. I might not do scales today, and I might not, play whatever, the clarinet, which I played for years when I was younger. But the fact that I know how the clarinet works and that I understand how woodwinds are, and the fact that I did do for years scales on the piano and in my voice on a regular basis gave me a sort of understanding of harmony, of melody, of discipline, of a whole series of other things that I now apply to other parts of my life. And that's really probably one of the things that I do best as a coach is I help you see how the thing that you did for a little bit and then dropped off. For example, I studied Japanese for several years when I was with Microsoft. And today I work with a lot, we have a lot of Japanese initiates in Damanhur, and there's cultural norms connected. Or when I was with Cirque, that I worked with a lot of Russians and Bulgarians and Belarus and all these different people. There are cultural norms that are embedded in the language that I might not speak the language. But for example, I just had a call the other day with a group that is mainly around Tokyo. And it was, you have to understand that the Japanese don't like to ask questions, and they have like a very specific ways of doing things. But I was able to kind of go beyond that because studying the language, understanding these other pieces gives me the opportunity to not blend, but like connect into their cultural way of doing things differently. And that's what I really look to help my clients do, which is, I don't want you to change. I don't want you to even have to finish projects. I want you to reap the benefits of whatever it is that you did do and see how that can be applied to so many other things that you want to do.
Right.
So that it works the way your mind works.
I have a funny feeling you're like me. You probably like all types of music as well.
Oh,
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My music players are like super confused. It'll go from like Iron Maiden to like Mozart and then like poppy stuff. And she's just like, what the heck is that?
All right, are we twins?
I think so. We look very similar.
I'm serious. I mean, I could do the same thing. I can be jamming to Iron Maiden and then I can turn right around. I can listen to an opera. Yep. I can listen to classical, jazz, even rap.
Yep.
But I'm the type to where I want to have headphones on if anybody's home because I like to crank it up. I like to pull out all the different instruments and I love it. If there's lyrics, I love a song that tells a good story.
Yep. That's why I love musicals. I mean, I love going. I was just in New York a few weeks ago and it had been a while since I had gone and it was wonderful. I got to see one of the only musicals that is completely dedicated to a tree, which is Redwoods that just closed. I was so lucky to be able to see it. It's a very modern musical where in the center of the stage is the trunk of a redwood tree named Stella. And so it was really fascinating to see, how, I mean, it's still a little bit too human centric from my perspective. I would love, I'm like, if anybody from Redwood wants to hire me to help you kind of planticize it a little bit more, to give Stella a little bit more her spotlight because she deserves it. I'm here. I would happily do this. But I do love the fact that this whole aspect of plant intelligence, of plant neurobiology, of understanding plants, that plants as mind and how is it that the plants think is starting to seep more into every aspect. So we see it with plant music. We see it with, in different aspects of movies and of clothing and and it's not just the sustainability, let's use plants, although there are still a lot of people that are doing that. But there's much more of a trend now to be like, it's okay to listen. Like you said, we've talked for years about talking to your plants, but now the message is starting to come out of listen to the plants.
And I mentioned something in the very beginning about grabbing your herbal tea or your mushroom coffee. That is okay, right?
Yeah. And I'm glad that you actually came back to that because I wanted to say this because I have one of my classes, one of the courses that I have, Reconnect with the Plant Kingdom. I have an entire module around food because food is a difficult topic, especially like when you start to work with plants, work with them rather than use them. It's really interesting how things change. Like I spent a long time where I didn't know I still have my moments, which is good. I love it. But where if I need to step on grass, for example, or, I was just taking a long walk through grass and all different kinds of plants that were out there, do I step? Do I not step? I love that because it's that hiccup of a moment of, let me connect. Yes, this is okay because plants are different. Their anatomy is different and they are here to be food for us. It's not a bad thing for us to eat plants. And as a matter of fact, I find as a person who has had situations around like eating disorders and other kind of things way back in my past, I love the fact that my connection to plants actually helps create a bond, which means sustainability is not something I do. It just comes naturally to me.
Yeah.
It's something that I naturally kind of don't buy extra food. I don't throw away a lot of waste. When I do it, I'm very conscious and I think about how did it happen? Why did it happen? How can I make it different? But because out of respect for the plants that gave my clothing is all natural clothing. I don't do polyesters and stuff like that. I slowly start to switch a lot of things out. There are some stuff I'm human and there are some stuff that in our human world we still don't know how to do. I mean, I still have technology sitting on my desk, but for example, my phone is a Fairphone, which is the world's most ecological phone out there. And so it has an entire series of set of properties around why it is most ecological and why I won't have to change that phone for 8 to 10 years because of the way that it's built, because how I can change the modules, because of all these different parts. And so these types of things start to naturally come into your sphere because of that connection.
A Fairphone?
Fairphone. Yep.
I've never heard of that.
I know. It's a Dutch company, started up several years ago, and over the years has just really done a fantastic job. There's a second phone that's kind of like the second most ecological phone, which is a German company named Shift. But Fairphone in particular has done a wonderful job at creating a phone. And also I have a pair of earbuds from them, and their whole premise, like it even has a little app of how can I get you to keep this phone for the longest period of time? So it comes with a little screwdriver. And everything inside of it is components. Besides the fact that they source all their materials from, the most ecological kind of fountains, they recycle everything. But the whole premise of the phone is that if anything happens, you can open the phone yourself and you can change the parts. And they always encourage you, for example, the box that it comes in, they're like, please don't throw this away, because whenever you send anything to us, we want you to use this same box. And it's all kind of done with the intention of, we want you to be able to slowly, if necessary, make changes. You send everything back to us so that we'll send you the new part. You put the new part in yourself so you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. And then you send us the old part, and we're building things with a circular economy in mind, which means I know how to take it apart. We know how to grab all the sources and the resources that we can and all these different things.
Interesting.
So my actually has a timer, and it says, how long do you want to keep this phone for? I think I have it set for 8 years. And I think I'm like 2 years into this 8-year cycle. And so, they tell you little things to do to just make sure that, you can keep the phone for that long period of time and stuff. But it's designed with the idea that even after those 8 to 10 years, if you can get to 10, you will still be able to send them back the phone, and they'll be able to, again, dismantle the phone, bring it back. But they're already building it with that intention. We don't want you to have to replace this phone over time continuously. We don't want you to create waste and stuff. And these types of things naturally come into your sphere when you start to shift, because I am connected. Mm-hmm. And so I certainly look for them, but I also give space for them to come in front of me and to show me and to allow me to connect into that.
I'm going to have to look into this now. I love my Fairphone. That.
I love my Fairphone.
Never heard of it. All right. So reconnect with plant wisdom. You started a couple years ago.
I did.
Why?
Because these conversations, so I find that there are just some amazing, so the podcast started really as a solo podcast, as an opportunity to make it easy for people, because when we talk about connection to nature, sure, that all sounds great. But then getting into the bells and whistles of it and like trying to get into it, most people will just think like, oh, yeah, whatever.
Right.
So I wanted to find a really easy way to share with people the transformations, the things that happen, especially around that original trauma that I was talking about, the idea that the anxiety and all these things that we tend to try to give lots of different titles to. But it's like, seriously, folks, plants, like, if you make friends with plants, so many of these things naturally kind of go away. And then I started to meet, I've always worked with great artists and really amazing thinkers that are working with plants in really unusual ways.
Right.
I always do a little pre-interview for all of my guests, because sure, there's lots of people that are using plants. So it's not an herbalist show. You're not going to get that kind of stuff. You're going to get relationships that people are forming, deep relationships that they're forming with specific plants, and what those relationships are taking them towards. Art, to relationship, friendship, healing, all these different things. I had an amazing, for example, medical doctor who went into was talking about how for his own healing, and he started to work on kind of a more shamanic path. And he's like, I realized that it wasn't about going out into the jungle and finding such and such plant, but like the rosemary in my house could really help me with all these things. Not because that rosemary has that property, but because the rosemary was connected to me in my yard, was growing with me. And rosemary really helped me find so many parts. And this is a medical doctor, board certified, all these different aspects. And so I love the podcast being able to really enrich that relationship and understand deeply, and just with no holds barred, like, let's just have a deep conversation about wherever things are taking us, from music, from creation, from seeing the world through different eyes, to what changes in you when you allow yourself to reconnect back to this part of yourself that is an innate part, your plantness.
Right.
And that's why it's called Reconnect with Plant Wisdom.
You're doing a great job with it.
Oh,
I've listened to a few episodes already, and it's like, this is interesting. And it's good because there's no other podcast out there like it that I know of.
I don't think so. I mean, I've invited, I listen to a lot of plant podcasts that are connected to plants in some ways, biophilia, biomimicry, sustainability things, plant botany, all these types of aspects. And I love them. I mean, I think they're great. But it is true that we didn't have, and that's the reason why I also created the Naturally Conscious community. I wanted a place where we could be like, I mean, we have hard conversations, both on the podcast as well. Things that you're not sure. You're like, I had to go buy such and such a thing. And I realized that I'm buying from, a plant that's being killed with no perspective. And I don't know how that makes me feel and blah, blah, blah. And we get into questions that we don't have answers for, because I'm convinced that part of what is making it difficult for us to reconnect with plants is the fact that if you think about it, so much of it will change. Like I was at a conference, a scientific conference, and I was listening to these amazing people who are talking about the intelligence of plants. And I make a comment. I'm like, well, do you ever think that you will get to a place where the experiments that you're doing to prove that plants have mind and probably consciousness and intelligence and sentience and whatever word you want to use are actually going to, you're not going to be able to carry out those same type of experiments, because once you reach consciousness, then at that point, you can't just dissect a plant because you feel like it. Like you can't just go and grow a plant to destroy the plant, to kill the plant. I mean, I know we still do it with animals, but there's a huge movement of we don't want to do this with animals. And one scientist was like, I don't think so. I'm never going to stop doing this. And I was like, isn't that kind of like, and so there's a lot of fear of, well, like you said, what do I eat? What do I wear? How do I build my house? How do I, if plants, so we have a whole paradigm shift that is not about looking at plants as humans or even as animals, where we think of life and death in the same terms. It's going to take us to rethink this whole thing in a completely different way. And honestly, we don't even know what that thing looks like. Yeah. And that's okay. That's where we are in our evolution. And we should have spaces where we can have that conversation without having to say, I know that plants and animal rights and plant rights and animal rights are not the same thing. No. They are two completely different worlds. And we don't really even know what plants' rights look like, because animal rights have been mirrored behind. As a matter of fact, people who do animal rights work do not like plant rights movements, because plant rights are not anthropomorphic in nature, where animal rights are anthropomorphic in nature. So there's this entire thing where they're like, you're hurting us, because now people are trying to say, oh, well, it's in the natural world. And it's like, no, they're all different. Yeah. And so, fungi rights are going to be different from, microbe rights are going to be different from plant rights, are going to be different from animal rights, are going to be different from human rights. But these types of conversations are long, they're hard, they're confusing, they're emotional, and I want to have them all. And
you learn from them.
You learn from them, you explore, you do not pretend that you have the answers.
Right.
You just try. You're like, let's try it, and then let's go ask a plant. And, my community has that mix of science as well as spirituality. It gives more space than the academic world does. And so I can have a conversation where I'm like, hey, I just read this study and this, and this, and this. And then, hey, why don't you all go and try connecting and communicating with a plant to get an answer, right? Where the scientific world would be like, I have to build an experiment. And we're like, screw that. We're going to all. And so I have 30, 40, 50 plant communicators that are asking, and then we can collate information and we can look at it from a different perspective. Right. So it's a little bit, it gives that fluidity of experimentation without all those rigid rules.
And speaking of conversations, and especially where you're at, and I know you do most of your stuff virtually. Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered hosting a retreat where you're at?
Oh, I do. I do. As a matter of fact, I was just in a meeting the other day because upon request, I have a like a 7-day and like a 10-day plan also that people can. And so if somebody wants to create a group, I've hosted it multiple times. I love doing it here. So if there are people out there that want to come to Damanhur and have like an immersive experience that again allows you to
it's life-changing,
explore exactly the scientific with the spiritual, with that whole connection piece, please feel free to reach out to me. I love hosting them. And then Damanhur is also putting together, between myself and three other plant communicators that live here, we've created kind of a 3-day experience as well that is going to go up on our website soon on damanhur.travel. That is exactly that. It's the opportunity for you to come and really use the container of this kind of Hogwarts container that I keep saying to connect, to learn about Damanhur, but also to have these deep experiences with plants. So super excited because it's been a while since we've, hosted one of these as Damanhur. And I love working with these ladies who are just, each one of us is so different in our style. Some are really somatic and one is a very musical. She's a jazz singer and she's very connected. One has got an academic background and I'm kind of the one that mixes all of this together. And so it's going to be fantastic for us to, host these types of things. So yeah, I love doing retreats here in Damanhur.
So with these retreats, how many people have come there and didn't want to leave?
Oh, yeah, that happens too. That happens.
I was going to say, I know if I head there, I'm not leaving.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, in August, we're going to be having our Damanhur Fest, which is a 3-day festival that we do here. And myself, I have 2 different activities and I'm going to be hosting, but I'm also kind of one of the co-hosts. There's 4 of us that are the co-hosts this year for the fest. And it's another great opportunity to kind of just come and experience Damanhur and, come a few days early and do the visit to the temples of humankind so that you can actually see the temple space, and then come and immerse yourself in a lot of the different aspects from alchemy to, communication with the plant world to community building, because obviously as a community, we do a lot of teaching and of giving people the experience of what it means to really build community and be together in these types of things. So, and a lot of healing work we do. We have various different schools, like the School for Spiritual Healers, the School for Awakened Dreamers, the School for the Alchemy School, the Mystery School. So we have a lot of information, a lot of knowledge that we love to share. And so the fest gives you kind of an opportunity. Plus it's going to be special this year. There's some really special things happening right now. So I'm excited for what's going to come of it.
I do have to get to Italy to visit my best friend. So I might have to try to plan a visit right around this time.
Feel free to contact me. I'm here.
And he already warned me. He told me I won't want to leave.
Yeah, you won't want to leave.
Probably why he decided to stay there. Something very important. Tell everybody the website and how they can get in touch with you.
Yes. So is really simple. It's just my whole name. So tigrillagardenia.com, which I'm sure you'll put in the show notes so people can just click it and make it easy. And that's the easiest way to get in touch with me. And also, like I said, the Naturally Conscious Community is .com. So naturallyconsciouscommunity.com or tigrillagardenia.com. Either way will take you to, different aspects of my website. And from there, you'll find everything, the podcast and quizzes to connect into your spirit wild plant and to understand different parts of yourself. I do live commentary. I have book club. I have a writing group. I really do a lot of different things because, again, as a multi-potentialite who loves to explore plants and that relationship in all different aspects, I got lots of ways for you to connect.
All right. So my last question for you.
Shoot.
Very important. If a listener is feeling lost, disconnected, or burnt out, what's the first thing you would encourage them to do today?
Book a call with me. That's what I would say. Simple. tigrillagardenia.com/contact. Book a call with me. Super low pressure, because the reason I say that is because if you're already burned out and overwhelmed and you go to something like my website, I understand that it could be overwhelming because you're like, oh my God, it's too much. I don't know where to start. But let's have a conversation, because what I love doing more than anything, like I said, is holding that space.
Yeah.
And I am sure that with that space, we will find the right path. Even if that right path is somebody else. Like I've got a Rolodex Did I just date myself with the Rolodex comment? A Rolodex. I've got I don't know what you call it. What is it called? My phone index, whatever it's called.
Your contact list.
My contact list. That's the word I was looking for. I've got a contact list. No more Rolodex. No, don't date yourself that much. But I've got a contact list filled with people who are amazing. And so, and again, like an ecosystem, that's what I love to do. It doesn't have to be me, but if I can just help you find that path that works for you, whether that's working with me, coming into the community, or even pointing you to somebody else, I am happy to do it because we all have so much to give. And, you know, we need support. Like, I really believe in the whole ecosystem idea. You do not need to go through this alone. And so let me help you. So first and foremost, book a call.
Yeah. See, you still say it so much pretty. God, I want to thank you so much. And I got to get you on again because I have a funny feeling you and I could sit there and talk about music for hours.
I am in agreement with you on that.
It works for me.
And I think that would be so much fun.
Oh, it would. It could be dangerous. Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Rich Bennett. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned something from it as I did. If you'd like to hear more conversations like this, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you have a moment, I'd love it if you could leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners and share more incredible stories. Don't forget to connect with us on social media or visit our website at conversationswithrichbennett.com for updates, giveaways, and more. Until next time, take care, be kind, and keep the conversations going. You know, it takes a lot to put a podcast together, and my sponsors help out a lot, but I also have some supporters that actually help me when it comes to the editing software, the hosting, and so forth. There's a lot that goes into putting this together. So I want to thank them. And if you can, please visit their websites, visit their businesses, support them however you can. So please visit the following: Real Life Prosthetics, cutting edge solutions, restoring ability since 2001. Go to reallifeprosthetics.com. Full Circle Boards. Nobody does charcuterie like Full Circle Boards. Visit them at fullcircleboards.com. Sincerely Sawyer Photography. Live in the moment. They'll capture it. Visit them at sincerelysawyer.com.